If you're a kid, please make note of this. It's for your own good. Hello, and good evening everyone. Halloween has come upon us once again. I'm not exactly sure how we'll all be spending it given the current predicament of the world, but I'm sure we'll all make do with what we have and enjoy another one of these days. Which brings us to what I shall be doing this evening. I was once looking into what I could do for tonight, venturing back into some kind of different castle, or going around destroying demons, but then someone told me of a land overrun by a spreading plague, and gave me the method to see what the whole deal was. A land far off, known as Hollowness. Truth be told, Hollow Knight was never really a game that caught my eye when it came out. I was just looking forward to what I wanted at the moment. So this was a game I knew of purely from word of mouth. There were people who did play the game and absolutely fell in love with it, and I was happy for them, especially given the content updates it got in 2018. Then, earlier this July, a mutual of mine decided to gift me the game on Steam during a conversation for video plans, so thank you so much for that. And that's why I decided to look at it for Halloween. There isn't a whole lot to go into in terms of its development cycle, aside from the fact that it was developed by a relatively new indie studio called Team Cherry. This is actually the first, and as of now, only game they have published, and given that it was kickstarted successfully, garnered a massive following after it came out, and even has a sequel coming, I'd say the project was a success for them, and I do congratulate them on the recognition that they got. But where does this game lie in my case? Well, this will be a night where all that will be revealed. I'm sorry if I get a little loose with this, but Hollow Knight doesn't really have a definitive narrative per se. It just gives you the beginning synopsis and a world to explore so that you can write your own story as you go along. No one has really described it concretely, but I will work with what I can observe. This kingdom, known as Hollowness, has been taken over by something known as the Infection, which has corrupted the minds of everyone and drove them insane. The ruler of Hollowness, called the Pale King, tried to contain the infection within one location, but that did not stop it entirely. It just held it back until a moment where it would once again flourish and wipe out what little there is left. Of course there is more to this, as there is more insight to the Pale King's true goals and how it conflicts with beings of higher power, but having a true complete story that everyone needs to accept is not really the point. The bits the game does give you are completely left up to interpretation. The knight you control does not speak and doesn't show anything resembling emotion. It merely serves as an extension of yourself, and the world built around it is what the game uses to ask you what exactly you think about each situation. While some of the characters do remain relatively upbeat and confident to instill that there is a bit of hope left, others are not quite the same way and are much more cynical or about as slimy as the world itself. But honestly, none of this comes off as the devs not caring about what they wanted to tell. It's actually quite the opposite. I feel this world is well defined and does give the player incentive to look around to find out just what happened here. There's a ton of visual storytelling from various landmarks you come across, certain characters, enemies, bosses, and even some areas changing in NPCs to even structure over time. The game does have a bit of groundwork, but most of it is for you to really think about, and I honestly say that it does a fairly good job with it. Sometimes I wonder how indie developers make such enamoring art styles for their first games. I know a lot of work goes into every single one of them, but there are certain ones that just blow me away, and Hollow Knight is a great example of this. The hand-drawn sprites for every living being on frame just look fantastic, because the way they move and express themselves pretty much conveys everything you need to know about them. I love how well they made each enemy that's meant to freak you out look grotesque without sacrificing any sort of quality. There are some genuinely great designs for NPCs, and most of the bosses really knock it out of the park with how they look. It almost seems like these designs are helping tell the story as well, along with the environment. You might forget that this game almost entirely takes place underground, because there's great variety in locations with their own brand of color choices that are mesmerizing. At the same time, though, they saturate them just right to convey the feeling of emptiness and despair, rather than just rely on whatever shades of brown, black, and blue there are. Everything is in shambles, there's little left of what was once a sprawling kingdom, and some parts of this world have just flat out lost it. Granted, not every single area is absolute aces in shading, but there are certain ones that really struck home with me when I stepped into them, especially the City of Tears. Music isn't one of my personal favorite soundtracks ever, but I really do enjoy how it's used to capture the atmosphere of an area or the mood of a certain boss fight. and it's also easy to soak it all in because the game runs perfectly on all hardware. Consistent frame rate, no slowdown at all, and not a single glitch in sight. Considering what you'll be doing in this game, the fact that they smoothed out everything is honestly impressive and worth praising. So on all fronts, Hollowness' presentation is top-notch and really does get me more interested into exploring more of what it has to offer. Speaking of which, it's time to dig deep into that. Well, this is another Metroidvania we're talking about here, and if you've been following me for a while, you might know what I mean by that. You've got a big world that you can't explore all of upon first starting the game, but as you explore the parts you can, you'll get more upgrades to go further, you get the point. However, with this setup and presentation on hand, Hollow Knight really emphasizes exploration above all else. Hollowness is a gargantuan location. These sections of the map are sprawling with things to see and collect, and even have their own subsections. This will undoubtedly be one of the make or break things about this game for you, because Team Cherry really wants you to find something out for yourself because of how navigation is handled. When you first get to that area, it is pretty much impossible to know how it will be laid out because you have no map for it. Maps can be brought from Kuro right here, which is great, and also makes him a swell guy, but when you get the map, it's only partially filled in, and whatever isn't has to be looked at yourself. But the thing is, you don't just walk into a new area and get it on the map. You have to walk in as much as you can before sitting down at a save point in order to successfully fill it in. These benches are the only way you can do this, as well as save and get all your health back. And there's not a lot of them to go around, so you really have to dig deep in order to really figure out where you're going. It's not helped at all by the fact that you only know where you are on the map from a compass that needs to be bought early on and equipped onto you. Now, I'm on two camps when it comes to this. On the one hand, I do enjoy exploring each area, and it feels rewarding when I stumble upon something new, whether it be an upgrade or a boss. This really does give the world a more mysterious vibe, and allows me to take whatever route I desire to find whatever I can. On the other hand, these areas are huge, and there's a lot of them, so if you want to get a move on, things get incredibly clunky, and there might be some occasions where you might stumble upon something that stops you from progressing, or kills you outright. Also doesn't help that this isn't like Breath of the Wild, where the game teaches you a few things and then you can barge right into the final boss with nothing added. You have to travel to 3 separate spots on the map to acquire 3 seals to open the way, which sounds simple, but each of these seals is tucked away behind some elaborate challenge that'll definitely require some extra gear to get over, and looking around in this massive world for things you can get will either be a fun, enthralling adventure, or slow build up to what the game wants you to do. This will be a hurdle to get over, and I think that those who really get into Hollowness, or are perfectly okay with a lack of sense of direction being the whole point of the game, will have fun with. If you don't like getting lost, or don't find the world very fascinating, I can tell Hollow Knight won't be your thing. But at the very least, you're not underpowered. The knight by default isn't capable of a lot. He only has a nail for a weapon, which does work like a sword, but you can only swing it once, 5 hit points, and the spokes meter, which needs to be charged by using your nail for combat, and can only be used to heal 1 hit point of damage at the start. Granted, in order to heal, you need to stand completely still, which might not seem ideal in some situations, but that healing can help you in a tight spot, especially since there are no consumable items in this game. And this is the only way you're getting health back, not counting benches or hot springs, which are rare. However, as you go on, you'll get more attacks that use this meter, like a fireball, which is really handy, a ground pound that I mostly used to access some areas I couldn't get to before, and this upward scream attack that I pretty much never used. Getting focus for them isn't hard to do, and heck, there are even ways to speed it up, but there might be times where you have no choice but to use your nail for melee combat to get some more. The knight in this game only has a nail for melees, but at least it can be upgraded, and you can come across some tutors that give you new moves to use it with, so you're plenty capable with it. But you'll definitely need to learn the ins and outs of how it all works to stand a chance. And yes, I'll say it now, this game is really hard. There's so many different kinds of challenges thrown at you in each area, and you need to optimize yourself to prepare for what's coming. There are plenty of enemies who will give you a hard time due to their placement or their actual strength, or level design can get difficult to traverse through depending on how powered up you are. I mean, in due time you'll get some movement utility like a dash, a double jump, a wall jump, and a horizontal zoom, which is basically a shine spark in every way except damage output, as well as some hazard protection, but for most of these areas, there will be challenges of all kind around the corner. But I'm glad to say that for the most part, Hollow Knight does a great job handling its difficulty. Everything is designed around the playstyle of the game, meaning that there is a fair solution to everything, even if it's not immediately identifiable. The levels require keeping a keen eye out for certain hazards and rarely get cheap shots off of you, and just about every enemy and boss has some kind of behavior that you can study and figure out how to beat. A challenge that I honestly love because it feels satisfying to learn them and overcome them, especially the bosses, which I feel like are the highlight of the game. Sure, there are some stinkers that really smell like the Fluke Marm, the Traitor Lord, and the Watcher Knight, but the game easily outweighs them with some genuinely great ones that take having readable attack patterns that are hard to learn but satisfying to overcome, and use it to deliver intense, blood-pumping, and genuinely challenging fights. Easy standouts for me go to the Mantis Lords, the Broken Vessel, Markoth, and the Dung Defender. To think I'd enjoy a fight that takes place in an enormous pile of feces. Though there is one part of the difficulty I'm not very keen on, and that's how death is handled. When you die, a shade comes out and it takes some of your magic as well as all of your geo, which is basically your money. It primarily hangs out somewhere in the room you died at, and there's not much consistency as to where it hangs out, so you might need to spend some time trying to find it and beat it up to get all that stuff back. I'm at least thankful that there is no point where it hangs out right over hazards, considering those can kill you, but at the same time it's very inconvenient, and depending on the situation, can hold back some willingness to explore, since I'm basically stuck retrying wherever I died, because yes, if you die without killing the Jade, the money it had gets permanently lost. Granted, as you go on, money does become more lucrative. You can even get a ton by doing things like finding these lost worms or participating in arena matches, but you still don't want to lose your money forever. That would blow. Speaking of money, Geo doesn't exactly act like experience points here, as the nail upgrades, nail moves, and spells are all you'll be doing, but you might want to have some around because there is Cornifer with the maps I mentioned earlier, another shop that sells you markers on the map, and one of the biggest mechanics you'll need to consider before heading out, that being charms. Charms are basically add-ons that you can equip to give yourself an added perk, like extending the range of your nail, increasing spell damage, increasing your healing speed, laying out spore clouds that deal damage to nearby foes whenever you heal, among tons of other things. Most of these do come in handy and make tasks much easier, but not without a catch. You can't change charms whenever you want. You can only do it when you're at a bench, meaning you gotta stick with your build until you find another bench, or die. I don't really get why this is, but I'm not complaining that much considering it does add more to consider before heading out. Certain charms may not be very useful against some areas or bosses, so you have the choice of changing your loadout and see if you can get different results. I'm also very fond of the variety of charms you have because it caters to multiple playstyles. It's totally possible to go with a dedicated magic build, play it as safe as possible, or just go in and deal as much damage as you can. That last one is personally my preference because I like ravaging opponents in a quick fashion, and those charms that cater to me easily got me through some of the bosses. Oh, Quick Slash Charm, how I love you so much! But no matter what you decide to do for your build, you will have a lot on your plate. Even if you decide to just get what's needed for the seals, go to the temple and call it a day, or do some of the more elaborate parts, Hollow Knight is jam-packed with content and will keep your attention if you decide to stick with it. I beat it in a little less than 19 hours, and there's still quite a bit of stuff I haven't looked into, like a couple of optional upgrades or the toughest area in the game. But honestly, I'm fine with what I have played, so in my book, that means this game has done its job. As someone who wasn't initially keen on the idea of getting this game, I must say that I had a good time with it. The lack of direction in a massive world will undoubtedly be a tough one to swallow, and I do think that it could lead to some tasks being way too drawn out for their own good, not to mention there are a fair few that are just complete trash. However, for what it was weaker in, I say it gets about 20 other things right, and make for an experience that I'm glad I played. Hollowness was a great world to explore. I enjoy the small touches that change depending on your progress. The charms are a neat mechanic. The movement and magic upgrades do make for some fun traveling experiences. The bosses are excellent, and however minuscule the plot may be, I do love how it tells it through its characters, both alive and dead, and how much you can piece together for yourself. I don't know if I'll ever revisit this, considering there are many other Metroidvanias I like more, not to mention it's a lot more demanding than other games I've played to boot. But if what I said really interests you, I strongly recommend you play this game. PC, PS4, Switch, I don't care. Just give it a shot if it has caught your eye. Show Team Cherry some love, and let's hope we can expect great things from them in the future. I'm the Lightning Ripper, and Zote is a fantastic ball to play with. Happy Halloween, everyone!